So thank you, John, and thank you, NAIFA Arkansas, for having me here today. I've been so fired up about this. In fact, I couldn't wait to be in Arkansas there with you. But this virtual environment is just as good. So I'm excited to be here specifically because I know that NAIFA Arkansas has such a rich history of leaders. And I know my good friend Cammie is doing an amazing job as NAIFA president. And then I got my guy, Wes Booker. I agree with you, John. The guy is a rock star. But Wes is there and he's bringing up the rear as a trustee. So very excited to be here. And also I have the unenviable position of being after Bill and before Deirdre. So I am going to do my best and we're going to have a lot of fun today. So my presentation today is called stick-to-itiveness. And to me, it's my favorite word in the English language because it means turning no into yes. Now, when I give this presentation, I always have to tell my audience that as I am talking to you, I am also talking to myself. Specifically because about 3 years ago, I made maybe the hardest decision that I had ever made in my life when I left what I had considered to be a dream job as managing director for Prudential South Florida Financial Group and transitioned back into the field as an advisor. And if anyone's ever made that transition, you know how scary that can be. So I left this nice, cushy salary and 10 years of management experience to go back into the field as an advisor where I did not have a book of business. I did not have any assets under management. And I moved from South Florida back to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I had not lived in 6 years, which meant that I was starting over brand new. It's a scary feeling. Now, because of my favorite word in the English language, stick-to-itiveness, I've been able to be really successful really quickly. And a lot of it has to do with 6 lessons that I learned during my NFL career that I'm going to share with you today. Now, before we get into So before I get started, I need your help, NAIFA Arkansas. So, you know, as John said, I played professional football, and unfortunately, I was not a star. So don't get excited by any means. I was not a star at all. But fortunately for me, because I happened to look like one of the stars for the New York Giants at the time, I got to live the life of an NFL celebrity. Now, for the football fans in the room, you guys know I'm talking about a guy named Tiki Barber. Now, I happen to think I'm a little better looking, but, you know, Tiki would be on the field and he would do all these amazing things. He'd score touchdowns, he'd catch passes, he's jumping over people. I'd spend about 90% of the game on the bench. And then after the game, Tiki would sneak out of the back of the stadium and I would walk out of the front. And all the fans would run to me thinking I was Tiki Barber. So I got to sign autographs, I got free drinks in New York City, I got all of these amazing experiences as Tiki Barber. Now, the irony of it all is that Tiki already has a twin, right? So I guess that technically makes us all triplets. So here's my mission. One of my missions in life is to be so successful in life after football that people start walking up to Tiki Barber and telling him he looks like me. All right, so I need your help, NAIFA Arkansas. If you ever run into Tiki, I need you to walk up to him and say, hey, you look like Delvin Joyce. Is that a deal? All right, fantastic. So let's talk about today's agenda. So we're going to talk about the word no, a word that has an undeniable pull on all of us. We're going to talk about my story and my experience with the word no. I'm going to talk about 6 ways that you could turn those no's into yeses by having stick-to-itiveness. And then hopefully if we have some time at the end, we'll take some questions. And throughout the presentation, I'm an avid reader. I was just telling a good friend yesterday that readers are leaders. And so one of the things that I'm going to do throughout this presentation is give you some books and some ideas of ways that you can continue your development after my presentation today. All right, so let's start with the word no, a word that has an undeniable effect on all of us. And for most of us, our experience with the word no started at a very young age, right? It was, for most of us, it was a word that we first learned. It was one of our first words because it's the word that our parents use most often to try to protect us, right? It's estimated that the average 2-year-old hears the word no, are you ready for this? About 400 times per day, 400 times. And it sounds like a lot, but think about it. When you say no to a little kid, like to a toddler, you don't just say no, you say no, no, no. That's 3 times right there. And so what happens is that over time, we hear no. And then eventually we learn another word. And that's the word that we use to push back against our parents who have told us no. What's that word? I think everybody knows the word I'm talking about. It's a simple word. It's why, right? And what do our parents say when we ask why? They say, because I said so, right? My mom was the queen of because I said so. In fact, I personally cannot wait to have kids just so I could say because I said so. And I use it often. But here's the problem. When we say because I said so, here's what our kids learned. Here's what you learned. We learn that no is absolute, that no is final, that no is insurmountable. And so when we believe that no is insurmountable, we start to give up on our dreams. And so we try out for the Little League sports team, and when we don't make it, we quit playing. Or when we try out for, the High School Musical, and we don't get the part that we want, we stop singing, we stop dancing. Here's my favorite. We finally build up the courage. We use all that great referral language that Bill Cates has taught us throughout the years, and we finally get in front of this client, and then they don't buy anything. And what happens? We burn their file, we delete their phone number, and we never call them again. So here's the thing. I, as a financial planner, am having my best year ever, right? I'm having a better year than I had last year. And last year was a better year before the previous year. And I'm not having the best year ever because a bunch of people are telling me yes this year. I'm having my best year because so many people last year told me no. And I have stick-to-itiveness. And I understand that every no plants a seed for a future yes. When I was managing director in South Florida, there were so many new advisors and agents who, gave up on their career early. Let's say 6 months after joining the firm, or maybe even a year after joining the firm, right? And they walk into my office, and what do you think the number one reason that they would quit on their dream was? The number one reason was that they ran out of people to talk to. That's what they told me. Now, let's do the math. There's about 6 million people in metropolitan South Florida. They didn't run out of people to talk to. They ran out of people that they thought would say yes. So we're all afraid of the word no. We hate the word no. But I read a very influential book, and I want you to read it. It's called Never Split the Difference. It's by a guy named Chris Voss, who was a former FBI hostage negotiator. And Chris Voss, in the book, talks about how he never believed that the negotiation started until he got the other party to say no. And so he invited the word no. He wanted the word no because it meant that the actual negotiation was starting. Because Chris understood, right, that, yes does not always mean yes. right? He said there are three types of yeses. He said there is the confirmation yes. That's when you say something that can be easily confirmed and the other person agrees and they say, yes, I agree with that, I confirm. Then there is the counterfeit yes. That is the yes where someone just yeses you to death just to get you out of their house, right? How many of us have been at the kitchen table with a client? You know, I hear agents and advisors talk about this all the time, how they, you know, I sat at that kitchen table with that client and I didn't leave until they signed the application. But what happens the next day? You know, the client goes into witness protection, never to be seen again, right? And so because they didn't give you a yes, they gave you a counterfeit yes. The last yes, and I think this is the one that we all want, it is the commitment yes. And that's when you know that someone is truly bought in to what you are presenting, right? And so if you get those no's out of the way, you'll get to the yeses. Now, I'm not saying that you should approach your financial services practice like a hostage negotiation, unless you're replacing whole life insurance, all right? All right, that was an insurance joke. But I've taken this concept and I've applied it to my practice. And so I give my clients the opportunity, I give them permission to tell me no. So for me in my practice, a lot of my friends are my clients, a lot of my clients are my friends. So here's a script, here's something that I say, you know, once I have built up the courage and I'm sitting down with them for the first time, I give them permission not to buy anything from me or not to become my client. Let's take that elephant out of the room because they're already nervous that if they don't, you know, that's the reason you got the meeting in the first place, right? So they're already nervous. They don't want to tell you no. Give them permission, right? So I say, listen, John, we're friends. If you decide that we should not work together in this way, I want you to feel comfortable enough to tell me. I can assure you it won't affect our friendship. We get that out of the way up front. Now, I wish I had known this language early in my career back in 2006, because, you know, I almost ended up back in the NFL because I was all over my friends. Now, when I say NFL, it wasn't the National Football League. It was no friends left, right? Or no family left, whichever one you want to go with. But I was all over people. You know what Bill talked about? Like you want to get all over people and just sharing with them everything you've learned and your expertise. That's what I was doing. But you got to give people permission to tell you no. I do want you to think of yourself though like a gas station pump, right? Now, we don't get to go anywhere anymore, so no one pumps gas anymore. In fact, my car is getting 3 weeks to the gallon. I know you guys can relate. But back when we could go outside and you had to get gas, in chat, if you've ever had a gas station car wash, raise your hand in the chat. Has anyone ever gotten a gas station car wash, right? So I had never gotten a gas station car wash. This machine has asked me, do I want a car wash about 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000 times. And I had said no to this machine about 1,000,000 times. Now, because I said no, it did not stop the machine from asking me again. The next time I showed up, it asked again. Because I told it no, it did not stop it from asking the person who pulled up at the pump after me if they wanted a gas station car wash. It kept asking, right? Now, I have a theory, and this is not mine. I think all great ideas are stolen. I heard this somewhere, but the theory is that pain determines pace. The amount of pain someone is in may, in fact, determine the pace at which they decide to work with you. And I'll give you an example. I had told this machine no 1,000,000 times. However, around December, we had some weather come through Charlotte. You know, they put down salt, and my car was as dirty as I'd ever seen. And I stopped to get gas. I was on my way to see a great client, and this client works in an office building, and I know that from his office, he can see into the parking lot, and he would likely see me getting out of my car to come see him. And I could not allow myself to be seen getting out of this really, really dirty car. And so pain determines pace. The gas station car wash asked me if I wanted a car wash, and I said yes. Now, even though I had told it a million times, no, I said yes that day. Pain determines pace. Your presentation may be fantastic. You may go through everything right. You may tell your client specifically why they need life insurance, and if they don't, here's what happens to their family. And you may walk out without a sale, but pain determines pace. You have to have stick-to-itiveness and the wherewithal to keep asking. I want you to be this gas station pump. Now, the great thing about this is when you start going to the gas station again and it asks you if you want a car wash, you're going to think about me. I love it. You're welcome. All right, so let's talk about my experience with the word no, because my story is littered with the word no. Now, this is my favorite family picture, all right? So that cute little guy in the ugly Christmas sweater, that is yours truly. The person in the middle, that's my sister. And to the right, that's my dad. And on the left, that's my mother. Now, my mom in this picture looks like an avatar, right? And here's why. My dad, over to the right, was 4 feet, 10 inches tall as an adult, all right? My sister, who in this picture is in the 3rd grade, they're the same height. And my dad told me, because of his height, he told me something very, very specific when I was a young man. He said, son, don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too small to do anything. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too small to do anything. And he told me this because when he was a kid, he said that because of his stature, he let people talk him out of pursuing his dreams to be a sports star. So I grew up with this little chip on my shoulder because my dad told me that I could be and do anything. And by the way, my mom gave me the discipline to actually do it. And when I say she gave me the discipline, come on, Arkansas, y'all in the South, y'all know what I'm talking about. She gave me the discipline. So my entire goal for my high school and my sports career was to get a college scholarship to play sports, because I knew that my parents probably didn't have the money to pay for college. So I knew I was going to have to get a scholarship, whether academic or athletic, in order to be able to afford it. And you can tell I'm 5 feet 6 inches tall now. In high school, I was 5'1", 5'2". I was not the tallest person. I've heard every short joke in the book. Now, one of my favorites is, Delvin, you're so short. We can see your feet in your driver's license picture. I mean, if you're going to make a short joke against me, it better be clever. That one is pretty good. But I've heard every short joke in the book, right? And all along the way, people had said, well, you're too short to play football, or you're too short to play basketball. But what did my dad tell me? He said, don't ever let anyone tell you that. And so I'll save you the details, but by the time I left high school, I was all state 3 times. I was all conference. I had broken all these school records. And unfortunately, when the time came to get recruited by colleges to get a scholarship, no college recruited me. Not one college in the entire country recruited me. Now, college scouts came to our school to see other players, some of my teammates, but every time my high school coach brought my name up, guess what they said? Well, he's a good player, but we don't believe he's big enough to be a college running back. All right. But what did my dad tell me? My dad gave me stick-to-itiveness. And so, unfortunately, I did not get a single scholarship offer from any school in the country. Now, I decided that, because my parents had taught me the value of academics and I had good grades, I decided I'm going to pick out what school I want to go to, and I'll just walk on to the football team. Now, if anyone knows anything about football, you know that in college athletics, there are scholarship players, and then there are walk-ons, but there are preferred walk-ons, and then there are unrecruited, uninvited walk-ons. The preferred walk-ons are kids that they say, hey, we think you're a good player. We want you to come to our program. We just don't have any scholarship money for you. We'll give you the opportunity. An uninvited, unrecruited walk-on like I was, they had no idea who I was when I got to that school, right? I just showed up first day of school at the coach's office and said, hey, my name is Delvin Joyce. My dad told me, no, I left that part out. I just said, hey, I'm Delvin Joyce and I want to play football. Now, I'm going to spare you the details, but when first time I hit the field, I heard all kinds of short jokes. In fact, my nickname, what they called me at JMU, I will never forget this, they called me Delf. It's like elf, but with a D, like Delvin, Delf. Yeah, I didn't think it was funny either. But long story short, by the time I left JMU, I had broken 8 school records. I had broken 2 NCAA records for punt return yards and kick return yards. And I was the first person in FCS, which Division I AA football history, to have 1,000 yards in 4 statistical categories. All right. Now, what am I thinking now? You know, at this point, I'm thinking the NFL. I'm finally going to live my NFL dream. Now, there were NFL scouts that came to our practices, that came to JMU to see some of my teammates. But every time my college football coach brought my name up after this stellar college football career, guess what they all said? Yeah, you know, he's a good player, but we don't think he's big enough to be an NFL running back. But what did my dad tell me? Don't ever let anyone tell you you're not big enough. And so, unfortunately, you can't just show up to an NFL stadium and say, I want to play, right? They have handcuffs for people that do that. So the biggest blessing I've ever gotten through all of this is that at the time, I had a friend who was working at John Hancock in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. And so I did not get drafted. My football career was, quote unquote, over, but I had a friend at John Hancock, and he said, you know what, Delvin, you would be amazing in this industry. And so I went up, interviewed, lo and behold, I got the job. I don't know why they hired me. And I just started selling long-term care insurance. And I fell in love with this industry. The biggest blessing ever, because after I finished football, I knew what I wanted to come back to. And so I'm selling, you know, insurance with John Hancock. I'm completely content. And then something strange happened, right? I showed all this stick-to-itiveness, and I got my college degree, and I got college paid for. But, you know, something strange happened. I still wanted to play football in the NFL. And my father-in-law, who at the time was just my girlfriend's dad, he reached out to me and said, hey, let's go to this Baltimore Ravens scrimmage. I was living in the Maryland area because I was working in DC. Let's go to this Baltimore Ravens scrimmage. And I was like, dude, I don't want to go to a scrimmage. Why do I want to see people practice? I've seen a million practices. No, thank you. But somehow he managed to drag me to this scrimmage. And I'm glad that he did, because here's what I saw. You know, that day, sitting in those bleachers, watching the Baltimore Ravens practice, I saw guys on that field, and I said, oh, that guy, he's an NFL player? Really? I'm better than that guy. Oh, really? He's on the Ravens? I'm better than him. And so when we get in the car and we're headed back home, I say to my father-in-law, I say, hey, you know, I think I can still play. And he said, oh, yeah? So we went literally, and this is a true story. We went to his basement that night. We made a copy of my college football highlight tape. We made these resumes that had all of my awards and accolades for my entire athletic career. We made these little business cards that said, Delvin Joyce, your next punt returner. And we sent them out to every team in the NFL. Guess how many teams called back? Just one. And it was the New York Giants, and they gave me an opportunity to play football, right? They said they were going to sign me. Now, anyone who understands NFL football, and I know my buddy Wes Booker certainly does, you understand that even though you sign an NFL contract, you're not necessarily on the team. So there's 80, 90 something guys that actually sign contracts and are invited to training camp, but only 53 actually make the active roster. And so I remember when I got there, right? First off, the short jokes, too many to mention. But secondly, the New York media, remember, I'm going to the Giants. We got the New York Times, we got the New York Post, the New York Daily News. And if you know anything about the New York media, then you know that they have a reputation for being like nice to people, right? Wrong. And so what the New York media said about me, and I'll never forget this because I cut all of these out and I still have a lot of these articles to this day. They said that, you know, they talk about the team, they talk about all the stars, all the people invited to camp. And then I was always this little tiny footnote that said, you know, oh yeah, there's also this kid named Delvin Joyce who's been out of football for a year as a financial advisor. He's a camp body. Now, a camp body basically means that I'm just a body that they invited to training camp because they had to invite a certain number of people. For all intents and purposes, I was going to be a tackling dummy. And what I'm so proud about is that a year later, I was on the cover of every major New York newspaper, and they had to all eat their words. And I'm not telling you this story to brag or to boast. I'm telling you this story to say that if I had not had stick-to-itiveness, even from the beginning, right out of high school, I would have never even had the opportunity to play college football. And if I had not shown stick-to-itiveness, I would have never had the opportunity to live out my dream to be an NFL football player. And so there are lessons that I learned as a part of that career that I want to share with you today. So we're going to go through these. These are 6 lessons. And the first is know, like, and trust. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And I know Deidre is going to do a great presentation on this after me about how to be more likable. But here's where I learned this. My first year in the NFL, there was another guy that was vying for that same roster spot as me. And for all intents and purposes, he was bigger than me. He was faster than me. And oh, by the way, he was already a professional because he was playing professionally at the time in Canada. He was playing for the Montreal Alouettes. He had been there for 4 or 5 years. So the guy was already a pro. I had been sitting at a cubicle at John Hancock making cold calls for the last year. But even though they knew both of us, they liked both of us, unfortunately, my other counterpart, his name was Antonio. Antonio struggled with learning the playbook. And I knew that playbook inside and out. So when I went into the game, the coaches could trust that I would be where I was supposed to be. They could trust that Kerry Collins wasn't going to get sacked because I missed a blitz pickup. They didn't have that same trust for Antonio. It's the only reason I made the team. Now, I use this Chick-fil-A example in this picture because, you know, what do we love about Chick-fil-A? We love the service, right? We love the way they treat us. Now, we also love that chicken sandwich with the little green pickle on it. And I don't know how they figured out to put that pickle on there, but it is perfectly placed. We love Chick-fil-A. But what we really love is how they treat us. Pleasure to serve you, blah, blah, blah. Now, the reason I use this example is because my wife is the smartest person I know, right? She also went to James Madison, except she graduated magna cum laude, and I graduated thanks a laude, right? But my wife, who is the smartest person I know, she's a veterinarian, she will not let our kids eat at McDonald's. She hates McDonald's. Why? Because that food is bad for you. We'll go to Chick-fil-A though, because Chick-fil-A is actually good for you, right? Wrong. Now, no disparagement to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, but the point is Chick-fil-A is just as bad for you nutritionally as McDonald's. Look at the nutrition facts on that beautiful chicken sandwich. I mean, there's 3,000 milligrams of sodium in that chicken sandwich. I don't think there's anything at McDonald's that has that level of sodium on the menu. But my wife, because of the way they treat her when she goes there, she trusts that the food is better, right? So I want you to think about how much time you're spending to be known, to be liked, and to be trusted in your respective marketplaces. And known, the know part of it is not just about, do they know you? The real question is, do these people know what you do? How many times have we been sitting around with a friend who, says, hey, yeah, I just had the hardest time rolling my 401k plan over to blah, blah, blah. And then what do you say? Well, I could have handled that rollover for you. And then what do they say? Oh, Delvin, I didn't know you did that. I'm sorry. I thought you sold insurance, or I thought you did X, Y, or Z. So make sure that people actually know what you do. What about being likable? There's so many ways to be likable. The best way that I found, though, is by being a great listener. I love to listen to people tell their story. And the reason I do is because I am, in fact, genuinely interested. I love people. I love hearing people's background. But listen, right? How many times have you actually, been with someone and you let them talk the entire time, and then they walk away, and what are they going to say? Oh, I met this Delvin guy, and I had the greatest conversation with that guy. What a nice dude, right? I didn't say anything. I just let them talk. People want to talk, and their favorite subject is about themselves. Ask them about themselves. And then the trust part. So trust is very, very special in this equation. Now, the good thing is that I don't think there's any science or anything exotic that you have to do to build trust. Here are just 4 ways that I think you can build trust. So the first is be on time. There's no reason to ever be late for anything. Be on time. I played for a guy my last year with the Giants, a guy named Tom Coughlin. For all the football fans on here, you know who I'm talking about. Tom Coughlin had a philosophy. If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, don't even bother showing up. So famously, his first year with the Giants, which again was my last year in 2004, famously, he fined perhaps the biggest star in our team at the time, Michael Strahan, right? He's an even bigger star now, but at the time, he fined Michael Strahan $5,000 for being on time to a meeting. Now, if you remember, this was a big hubbub in the media. There was almost a revolt, but he had a simple premise: be on time. If you're early, you're on time. Here's another one: do what you said you would do. And it's a shame that is a way to build trust right now in this society. But because so few people follow through on things that they say they're going to do, it is a phenomenal way to build trust with people. And if you tell your client, hey, I'm going to call you Tuesday at 2 p.m., you better call Tuesday at 2 p.m. because your clients understand that if you let them down with the small things, they can never trust you with the big things. I think the biggest reason why some people fail to follow through on what they said they would do is because we all have a tendency to overcommit ourselves, right? And so, I read a great book. This is not in the slides, but it's called Essentialism. And it's about how to actually start saying no and feel good about it. Because if you overextend yourself and you're trying to do too much, then you're going to be bad at some of the things that you actually commit to. The other thing is community service, right? So find something that you believe in and service the community. Not to be a creep, not to get clients. People can see a fake from a mile away. It better be something that you are truly passionate about. And then lastly, social media strategy. Now, this one took me a while. I will admit, it took me a while to come around to social media because I just saw it as people taking a bunch of selfies or self-promotion. But I have found that it's an amazing way to build trust in the community, especially in this digital age. And there was one headline that I saw that changed that for me. It was this Forbes magazine article is what sold me on social media, because we all know who that is. That's Kylie Jenner. And Kylie Jenner is a billionaire. Now, why is Kylie Jenner a billionaire? Could Kylie Jenner ascend to billionaire status without social media? The answer is no. Kylie Jenner is a billionaire because she's an influencer, or she was back when she was building those billions. Now she's her own brand, but as she was building, all these brands who wanted to have access to her followers and her community would pay her to represent their brand. She's an influencer, right? I want you to think about something. How many people watched the Super Bowl last year? Right? About 100 million people watched the Super Bowl last year. Now, it cost a whopping $5.6 million to run a 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl so that 100 million people feasibly could see your ad. Kylie Jenner has, and I checked this morning, 195 million followers on Instagram. All right. So if you're a brand and you want the maximum exposure, would you pay 5.6 million to run a Super Bowl ad so 100 million people could see it? Or would you maybe pay Kylie Jenner a couple of 100,000 to have access to 195 million followers? And that's the power of social media. And so I'm not saying that you need to run out and go be a social media influencer. What I am saying is, are you effectively utilizing social media to build your brand, to be known, liked, and trusted? So my go-to is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Every time I have an opportunity to speak in the community, I'm going to put that on LinkedIn. Anytime I have an important article I want to share, I'm going to put that on LinkedIn. That lends me credibility and helps me to be more trustworthy. People may not click the like button on your profile, right? They may not click the like button on your post, but the reality is they saw it, all right? And so it helps you to gain that trust and credibility. Now, my company does not allow us to post on Instagram, but I did start an Instagram just so I could have fun and post pictures of my family. And so now my new slogan is, don't follow your dreams, follow my Instagram. I'm at Delvin J33. That's terrible, right? That's terrible. All right, follow me. All right, so here's the challenge. Now that we have gotten known, liked, and trusted, the thing that most advisors struggle with is how to make that transition, right? How do I transition this personal relationship or this, community relationship to a business relationship? So this is language that I learned early in my career, and it comes straight from a guy named Richard Wildman. He's up there in the Bill Gates echelon of, industry professionals that I look up to. And Richard Wildman taught me this language, and it's called transition language. Listen, John, I really enjoy getting to know you personally. I'd love the opportunity to introduce myself to you professionally and show you how I work with my clients. Now, listen, say it how you say it, personalize it, right? Internalize this language, personalize it, and say it how you would say it. But the reality is you want to say, hey, I really enjoy getting to know you being on this nonprofit board. I just realized I've never had the opportunity to introduce myself to you professionally to show you how I work with my clients, right? Build the courage to say that. The worst they could tell you is what? No, and we already talked about that. Now, here's the other challenge. A lot of us have these really close personal friendships, right? These relationships that we don't want to intrude on. We don't want to bring the business side into this relationship because I may lose a friend. But who needs us most? If you had a cure for cancer, who would you give it to first? You give it to your friends and your family. And so the close relationship transition that I used, and by the way, I got this language straight from a NAIFA meeting. I was in Miami. I went to a NAIFA Miami meeting, and they had a speaker there, and he gave us this language, and it was perfect, and I've been using it ever since. So listen, Wes, our relationship means more to me than any sort of business we could ever do together. but I wanted to let you know if you ever need my help, my door is always open. You're at least letting people know that you're open for business, right? And you're not trying to sell them anything. You're offering to be a resource. It's totally different mindset. So here's a great book that I read on how to be known, liked, and trusted in your community, not by being a taker, but by being a giver. It's called The Go-Giver. So I'd definitely encourage you to read this book, and I think it will give you some awesome perspective on how to build your brand within your respective communities. Now, I've taken some of the principles in this book and I've applied it to the way that I interact with people on LinkedIn. So how many of us get an invitation from someone on LinkedIn, and before we can click on, accept, we're already firing back an email about, hey, let's grab coffee and see what kind of synergy we have, right? We're all guilty of that. Maybe step back for a second and offer to be a giver. So here's a script that I send every time I connect with someone on LinkedIn. So it's, hey, thanks for connecting. Let me know if I can ever introduce you to someone in my network. It's as simple as that. And I'm telling you, people love that. And they always reply, hey, Delvin, that's awesome. I will. You do the same. Because there's this law of reciprocity in this world. And so you can't offer something like that without them reciprocating. And you know what I do? I go in their connections and I say, hey, you know what? I'd love it. I don't know how well you know Wes Booker, but I've been trying to meet that guy forever. Could you make an introduction? Right? So be a giver. All right, lesson 2. Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. This picture is the last time, sad to say, it's the last time I actually colored something. All right, it was my freshman year of college. I had a terrible week of practice and I had an even worse game, all right? And I was down in the dumps, super down. And someone, for whatever reason, gave me this drawing. And I took that drawing home, and no doubt, I actually sat down, pulled out some magic markers, and I colored this thing and hung it over my bed in my dorm room to remind me that life is only 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And I went out the very next week and had one of the best games of my JMU football career. So are we going to experience adversity in this business? Oh, no question, we're going to experience adversity in this business. And how you respond to that adversity will determine how successful you're going to be. How much stick-to-itiveness do you have? So there's a couple of ways that I think you can overcome adversity. These are just 4 things that I believe. And by the way, I forgot to say this at the beginning. Nothing that I'm going to say in this presentation is the gospel, right? I'm just a guy who's got an opinion, and your opinion may be different, but hopefully I can share some perspective that may challenge your opinion. And here's my opinion. Overcoming adversity, what always worked for me, is hard work. Work harder. I am not one of these work smarter people, because I personally believe that the work smarter crowd are a bunch of people who used hard work throughout their journey to get to the top, to have the luxury of writing a book to say, hey, don't work hard, work smart. I believe that there is no substitute for working hard. There's so many agents and advisors now, they're going to say, hey, you shouldn't drive all the way out to Little Rock to write that policy. Now, Little Rock might be the only city I know in Arkansas. I'm sad to say, I'm terrible with geography, but that's the only example I could use. But hey, don't drive all the way out to Little Rock to write that policy. You got to work smart. Meanwhile, when they were new agents and advisors in this business, they did whatever they had to do to survive. So hard work. Now, if by work hard or by work smart, you mean focusing on green activity, and I say green activity is that activity that's going to drive revenue and be the most productive for you, then absolutely, I agree with you. Working smart is absolutely the right thing to do. Review your model work week to make sure you have enough time allotted for that green activity. And this one I'm really passionate about. spend time with positive, successful people. Now, that's not human nature. Human nature likes a pity party. So if I am, teed off about prudential underwriting and prudential underwriting sucks because I got this big case declined, now I'm probably going to go sit next to my guy Bill over here because I know Bill also hates prudential underwriting because I hear him. He's always talking about how underwriting stinks, right? They don't want us to sell any business. So I'm going to go hang out with Bill and we're going to just commiserate in a bunch of negativity. I'm not going to go spend time with John Vance because John Vance is one of the most positive, successful people I know. And John Vance might actually challenge me and ask me about my field underwriting, right? And I don't want that. It's the same reason that, if you hate Donald Trump and everything Republican, you're going to go home tonight and you're going to flip on CNN or MSNBC and you're going to be in heaven because they're going to reinforce everything that you already believe. Conversely, if you hate Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, the Democrats, you're going to go home and you're going to pop on Fox News and you are going to commiserate in the hate that is, the other side. And so if you do the opposite, imagine how uncomfortable that makes you. I would encourage you to spend time with positive, successful people. They're going to challenge you. They're going to challenge your thought processes. Now, the most positive person has to be yourself because you're going to spend and talk to yourself more than anyone else. So you yourself have to have a positive mindset. Let's do this quick exercise. Everybody likes lemonade, right? Everybody likes lemon, but I want everybody on this call right now to imagine taking a big, juicy bite out of one of these lemons. Now, if you have a great imagination like me, because I have small children and we used to watch Barney, so I honed my imagination. But if you have a great imagination, you probably actually got a physical response from just imagining biting into a lemon, right? Your neck kind of tensed up, your back of your taste buds kind of puckered up. It was a physical response from just something that you thought about in your mind. I want you to think about, all that self-doubt and all that discouragement that you constantly tell yourself, right? How that manifests physically for you. Because if you're constantly telling yourself that this business is too hard and you can't do it, then when you pick up the phone to call that client, I don't care how great your language is and your scripting, you're not going to have that confidence. You're not going to believe it, and clients are going to pick up on that. So the most positive person has to be yourself. All right, so a great book. I love this book. It's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. She also has a TED Talk. So if you are not a reader, just Google the TED Talk. It's also called Grit. But in this book, she talks about how the most successful people are not always, the smartest or the best looking or the most talented people. They are the people who have grit, right? And she talks about grit as a personality trait, which means that, it's not an inherent skill. It's something that can actually be grown and developed. And in the book, she talks about, for you specifically, how you can grow your grit. I think she should have called it stick-to-itiveness, but maybe she's saving that title for me. Right? All right, let's go to lesson 3. So lesson 3, amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. I learned this lesson my rookie year in the NFL because we practiced totally different in the National Football League than we ever practiced in college. In college, we'd have, we'd put 100 plays into the game plan for our next opponent, and we'd practice all 100 plays and blah, blah, blah. And we get to the game, and we'd probably only run 10 or 12 of those plays, right? So we spent all that time practicing all these different plays until we got them just right. And then we get to the game, we only run 10 or 12. In the NFL, for each game plan, we probably only had 10 plays, but we had all these different formations that we could run them out of, but we'd have 10 plays, and we wouldn't practice them until we got it right. We practiced them until we couldn't get it wrong. That was the difference. There's an unbelievable movie that I saw back in December that totally gave me a paradigm shift. And if anyone knows this picture that's on your screen, if you've ever seen this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the movie was called Free Solo. And it's a movie about a guy, there he is, who goes to Yosemite Park in California, and he's going to climb El Capitan free, right? And free means with no ropes and by himself. Now, for you and I, that sounds crazy. And where I got the paradigm shift is that he says in the movie, I think his name is Andy, he says that people confuse consequences with risk, right? People confuse consequences with risk. He said that people look at him climbing El Capitan with no ropes, and they look at the consequences of him falling, and they conflate that with the risk of him falling. Because we know that if you fall, you don't have ropes, you're dead, game over. That is a dire consequence. But if you watch the documentary, they show how he actually practiced with ropes. And he practiced. He practiced when the sun was up. He practiced when the sun was down. He knew every nook and cranny in that rock. And so while the consequence of him falling was great, the risk of him actually falling was minimal because he had practiced until he couldn't get it wrong. I want you to think about how you are applying that concept to your practice, right? Are you just kind of, walking in and winging it with your client? Or every time you pick up the phone, you're just winging it and figuring it out as it goes along? Or are you practicing those scripts? Are you practicing that language that Bill and Deidre are going to teach you today so that when you have the opportunity to use it, you can't get it wrong, all right? Think about how much we would practice if our client interactions were life and death. If anyone had not seen this movie, I would encourage you to go see it because it will totally change your perspective. Now, there's a book that I read called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, because the challenge for a lot of us is that we are big picture, high level people, right? We're extroverts, we're salespeople. We like the high level stuff. We don't like to practice. A lot of us are like Allen Iverson, right? So this book talks about how you can still be that big picture, high level person, but get down into the weeds and really start to execute. And so it talks about these 4 disciplines that you should implement. I'm going to go through these really quickly, but the first thing is to determine your wildly important goals. You can't start the year with 10 goals. You got to start the year with 2 or 3 goals. Because if you have 10 goals, you'll probably accomplish 2 or 3, right? If you have 3 goals, you'll accomplish all 3 and you'll do them exceptionally well. So determine your wildly important and practice. Focus on the lead measures, right? Don't focus on the end number. Don't focus on the 200,000 of revenue that I want to do this year. Focus on the activity that's going to get you to that revenue and keep score, right? Keep score. Winners keep score. Last thing, create a cadence of accountability, right? So you have to create this cadence of accountability where if, you have to hold yourself accountable, share your objectives, share your wildly important goals with other people so that they can hold you accountable. Keep yourself accountable. All right. So here's some other ways that I think that you can be a professional in addition to practice. You have to specialize. Bill talked about this and he did a fantastic job, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. But also have the expertise to be a professional. And your ability, I think, to explain things simply is going to set you apart from everyone else. One of the biggest ways that I have seen that you can explain things simply is to actually know the information yourself, to know it cold. Because when you only know it on a cursory level, right, when you know it, maybe a little bit, that's when you have a tendency to use jargon and all these other things that will confuse your client, right? But if you actually can explain it simply because you know it, then you'll explain it better. Last thing, NAIFA membership, right? I think Alan said earlier that we have a code of conduct that we are obligated to abide by with our clients. Unfortunately, that will set you apart and make you a professional. Join NAIFA, stay with NAIFA, get involved. All right, lesson 4. There's always someone looking to take your spot. And I don't mean that you should be looking over your shoulder because people are malicious and vindictive and they're going to stab you in the back. But I believe that if we all operated and performed in our relationships, in our marriages, in our careers and our jobs, as if there was someone who's looking to take our spot, we'll be better friends, we'll be better husbands, we'll be better wives, we'll be better financial advisors. So where I learned this lesson, again, my rookie year in the NFL, I had worked my way up to be the starting punt and kick returner for the Giants. Lifelong dream, right? And, you know, we were in practice. I got hurt. I tweaked my ankle. And I just kind of, you know, moseyed on over to the training table and let the trainers take care of me. Because, you know, I tweaked my ankle a little bit. So I'm over there drinking Gatorade. The trainers are working on me, taping my ankles and blah, blah, blah. And my backup, a guy named Daryl Jones out of Miami, he goes in and he does something phenomenal in my spot. All right. And then he does it again. And all the players, everybody starts looking at me while I'm on this training table and I'm, you know, drinking Gatorade. They start saying this name. And I never heard this name before. And back then we didn't have Google, but they started saying, Wally Pipp, Wally Pipp. It was, as I can hear it like it was yesterday. Who knows who Wally Pipp is? So on your screen on the left is Wally Pipp. And as legend has it, Wally Pipp played first base for the Yankees, but Wally Pipp, before a game, had a toothache or a headache or something. Excuse me. And he didn't go out to play one game because of this headache. And guess who took his spot? Lou Gehrig. And Lou Gehrig, anyone who knows baseball, holds the record for the most consecutive games played in Major League Baseball, or at least he did until Cal Ripken broke it a couple of years ago. So Lou Gehrig took his spot, and Wally Pipp never got another opportunity. He doesn't even have New York on his shirt in this picture. And so how are you applying this principle to your practice? Are you treating your clients like there's someone that wants to take your spot? Or are you comfortable, right? So we are high touch, high contact in my practice. Our clients know that we value them and that we're always checking in, right? And so obviously we had some volatility this year in the stock market. March was a horrible year, right? And here's an email. And for some of my clients, I called them and used this exact script. In a lot of cases, I left a voicemail, but hey, as you know, as you have probably seen, this has not been a great week in the market. Just wanted to let you know I'm monitoring your account and the situation very carefully, right? So just checking in to let them know will prevent them from answering the phone or moving their account when the other advisor calls. Now, again, a lot of people told me no, and so here's a script or an email that I sent out to prospects, specifically people who told me no because they had another advisor relationship. So, hey, just checking in, as the last couple of weeks have been extremely volatile for the market. I'm not sure if you've communicated with your advisor recently, but I'd like to share 3 questions that you should be asking him or her relative to your portfolio during your next account review. And I just list off 3 questions. How do they feel about lowering interest rates? How do they feel about the effects of coronavirus on blah, 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 all right? Let me know if you'd like to continue our conversation, and I can share my thoughts with you on these 3 key issues. Do you know how much money that I picked up from other advisors during March in one of the worst stock market downturns in the history of the stock market? And it's because I understand that there's someone out there that wants to take my spot. So ask yourself, are you comfortable or are you being proactive? Because a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. right? All right, last two, and then I am out of here. So lesson 5. Anybody know who that is? That's one of my favorite people. It's prime time Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders used to say, if I look good, I feel good. And if I feel good, I play good. And if I play good, I know some of you can finish it for me, they pay good, right? And here's why I learned this lesson. We had a guy on our team with the Giants. His name was Jason Sehorn. I think he's on Fox Business now, probably. But Jason was a pretty boy from California, right? He's from Southern California. He went to USC. He was married to an actress at the time, Angie Harmon. And so Jason, before practice, would be in the mirror, fixing his uniform, making sure that everything was perfectly tucked in, his socks were perfect. You know, he's like combing his hair, and I'm like, dude, we're about to put on a helmet. Like, why are you doing your hair, right? And so he looks at me and he says, Joyce, if I look good, I feel good. And if I feel good, I'm gonna practice good. And if I practice good, on Sunday, I'm gonna play good. And if I play good, they pay good. And he said, you know who said that first? And I had no idea. And he said, Deion Sanders. And so I have applied this principle into my practice because I believe that people have a perception of what a financial advisor looks like or an insurance agent. And so I am going to make sure that one of the reasons they are not going to do business with me is not because I don't look the part. I'm going to look great. Now, right now, notwithstanding, because I'm sitting in my house on a computer Zoom call, but I am not a casual Friday kind of person. Casual Friday for me means I'm going to take my pocket square out, right? And I'm always going to wear a tie. I'm always going to wear a suit, unless I'm on a Zoom call on a Wednesday afternoon. So take that into account, because here's the reality. In 1/10 of a second, people are going to make a judgment about your ability and your competence to do your job, and it has nothing to do with your expertise and everything to do with how you look. In less than 1/10 of a second, they're going to make that judgment. So why not make the best impression ever? Now, I'm not saying that you need to wear a suit and a tie. I am saying that you need to wear whatever will allow you to present your most authentic self, because that is going to give you the most confidence to project and do a great job. For me, that's a suit and a tie. Now, this is a great book. It's called First Impressions, What You Don't Know About How Others See You. This is a book about how to make that best first impression so that that is not a barrier to you actually influencing or getting a sale. So check it out. Last thing, and I'm going to wrap up, burn the ships. Burn the ships. And John referenced that I got an opportunity to speak at the national conference at Performance Plus Purpose last year in Orlando. And I talked about this concept, and I told this story because the first time that I heard burn the ships was my rookie year with the Giants. And it was because all of our teammates were talking about what they considered to be the best pregame speech of all time in Giants history. And it was a speech given by my twin brother, Tiki Barber, before they played the Minnesota Vikings in the 2000 NFC Championship game. And as the story goes, Tiki in the pregame tells the players in the locker room how Vikings, because remember, they're playing the Vikings, he told the story of how when Vikings would either invade an island or invade a foreign land, or they would take over another fleet of ships, the first thing they would do was burn their own ships. And why would they do that? Because it was no retreat, no surrender. That failure was not an option. And he told the team that day that if they were going to be successful against the Minnesota Vikings, they had to burn the ships because failure was not an option. And then he reached into his pants and he pulled out this paper origami Viking ship and he set it on fire right there in the locker room. And the team went wild, and they went out and they beat the Vikings 50-something to nothing to advance to the Super Bowl. So here's my question for you. Have you burned the ships? Is failure an option for you? Because a lot of us who come into this industry, we're career changers. We could easily, tiptoe into this insurance or financial advisor thing. And if it doesn't work, I can always go back to my career, right? That other career, that's a ship. You got to burn it. You have to look at this career as if it's no retreat, no surrender. Failure is not an option. All those negative doubts and the self-doubting and all those things that you're telling yourself about why you can't be successful, all those excuses, those are ships. You got to burn them. So thank you, NAIFA, Arkansas. This has been a lot of fun. I wish we were there in person, but I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and I wish you all the best of luck with your stick-to-itiveness journey. Thank you.